Fecha, fecha o.
Om Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Ishvaro Guratmeti Murti Veda Vivagine Vyomabda Dhyaya Dakshinamurtiya Namaha Tava Vedanta Sedanta Gocharam Tamagocharam Govindam Paramanandam Satguru Anatosham Om Shanti 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 Om. So last couple of classes we have covered the 5 sheets, the 5 koshas, which goes for the 5 different levels of ignorance, we could say. So avidya, the ignorance, the self appearing, as the jiva, having all sorts of experiences. It presents itself as 5 different layers of ignorance. So the identification of the self with those 5 different levels of experience is called the 5 sheets or the 5 koshas. So the most common of those ignorance is the ignorance that I am the body, I am the physical body. Huh? So this is the most fundamental, the most gross, the most identification or ignorance, experience of ignorance is the self appearing as the human jiva and experience I am the body, the thought I am the body, physical body. Okay, I am fat, I'm skinny, I'm white, I'm black, I'm tall, I'm short, and so on. So there are 5 layers of those misidentifications of the true nature of this I. And one of them is the I identified with the physical body. Okay? So that is considered in this analysis of the 5 koshas as the food kosha, the food sheets, because the physical body is food. Yeah?
Mais.
On another level, a little subtler, there is another experience, human experience, that appears as the self identified with the pranas, with its jiva's physiological system. Okay? So the digestion, circulation, excretion, expulsion, and so on. So all this dynamic activity that Ishvara works for us 24/7, having all our systems getting properly regulated and balanced, and so on. So this brings about a different kind of misidentification. We identify as the vital air sheet, okay? The pranic energy that runs all these physiological systems. So we identify with the pranas, and then we say, I am hot, I am cold, I am undigested, let's say, constipated, I am hot, I am cold, and so on. So all these identifications is a second level of erroneous identification that we call ignorance. So, and when we use this word ignorance in Vedanta, we refer to ignorance in reference to the knowledge regarding one's true fundamental nature as pure limitless consciousness. It's not ignorance in the general sense of the word ignorance. It's a specific ignorance of one's true fundamental nature / identity. So this ignorance appears, as this misidentification as the food body, as the pranas, the pranas or the vital air koshas or sheets, And then another level is the identification with the mind. The mind is the aspect of our subtle body that feels the contact with a sought object. Life is nothing but a transaction between the subject and objects appearing within the scope of the subject principle. No? So therefore, life being just a transaction between subject and object, the gate into this experience is through the mind. So the mind is that aspect that's going to integrate the sense experience into one single experience, and it's going to feel, doubt, and so on. And emote, it's going to emote, because in order to submit any contact or impression or any input of those objects of experience, it needs to emote it and pass it on to another aspect of the subtle body, which is going to decide, determine, discern, and so on. So, but going back to the mind is another aspect of these different layers of human ignorance, called the 5 koshas, or the 5 misidentifications of the self with different levels of experience. And the self identified as the mind is going to say like that, oh, I am sad, I am happy, I am depressed, or any kind of feeling sensation, or I think. When you say I think, I doubt, okay? So I feel, so all of that is an indication of this avidya, this level of misidentification or ignorance of the self, as if the self became that kind of limiting experience. No? So we are just going quickly through what we have covered. Vidya, you who came now, we covered in the past few classes. So another layer of erroneous identification is the one with the intellect. And the self identified with the intellect, it's going to have certain experience of identifications with its own notions, ideas, determinations, okay, deductions, and everything that somehow defines our intellectual faculty. We will be identifying and feeling that I am the yana, how you say? Yanamaya, yeah, Vyanamaya kosha, yeah, the intellectual sheets in English language, okay?
Vishnanamaya.
Huh?
It's Vishnanamaya.
Yeah, but there are people who say Vijnana.
Oh, yeah?
Vijnana, Vishnana, yeah. Vijnana. So this identification with the intellect is is the 4th layer of a human experience, or layer of human existence that we get the self identifies with. And the 5th is with the causal body, or what in this analysis is called the bliss sheets, okay? So the bliss sheets is the identification of the self with that state called Ananda Maya Kosha. Okay? Ananda is the kosha that all of us experience in deep sleep, or every time we feel full, whole, and complete, because life is just present itself to us in a way that we don't have any raga, any dvesha disturbing the mind. Therefore, the mind feels like there is nothing lacking, there is nothing missing. I feel whole, satisfied, complete. Therefore, we have an experience of fullness, of Ananda Maya Kosha. So this experience of satisfaction, the bliss, and so on, is another way that the self, or Maya, tricks the self, now apparently tricks the self to believe that he is that sublime, beautiful, pleasant, kind of experience. So, and all of this analysis serves the purpose only to discriminating and isolating one fundamental factor through all those 5 levels of experience, which is that factor which does not change, an invariable factor that never changes. So the self is that which is always ever present, without ever change, through all those 5 levels of human misidentification with different levels of experience. Okay, so I'm blissful, I'm happy, I'm peaceful, I'm pure love. All of that is again an experience of ignorance, avidya, the self identified with Ananda Maya Kosha. And
sorry, I was just going to relate to that just very quickly, because my wife and kids have gone away to my in-laws 200 miles away, and I'm very in tune with my Ananda Maya Kosha at the moment, because the house is peaceful.
I see. Yeah, so but you don't want to get identified with it, because they know they are coming back, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So we need to identify with that, behind all circumstances or of circumstance or experience. So having said that, I think we closed the bliss sheets last week to bring us to the conclusion that the self is none of those 5 layers of human experience, okay, or 5 levels of identification. So although you refer to your possessions, we always refer to our possessions as mine, such my house, my dog, my clothes, my car, and so on. We always refer to them as mine. Therefore, it's something other than myself. It's something that I possess. Similarly, you refer to the 3 bodies or the 5 sheets. In the case of this analysis, we can say the 5 sheets, the 3 bodies, as my body, my physiological functions, my mind, my intellect, and my ignorance. If I say mine, 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 what is the implied meaning? Is that is something other than myself, okay? My experience of bliss, my experience of my physical body, as I'm tall, I'm short, I'm fat, and I'm skinny, and all these different level of emotional experience and so on, I say my experience of such and such. I mean, we say I am sad, okay? When we say I am sad, we are really under a video on a denser level, because I am sad. But when we come to the point to say I experience sadness, and then immediately there is an opportunity to discriminate you from my experience, okay? And the same way that we don't identify with our possessions, such as the house, the car, the dog, and so on, we have the possibility of not identify with those 5 different levels of identification that we end up totally attached, as if it's my body, it's my mind, it's my intellect, it's my peaceful mind without my wife, and so on. So mine, I and mine is the big problem, because the self does not own anything. The self is free from any and all experience of life, okay? It's untouched by any one of these circumstances. So they are the not self, all different levels of ignorance. They are the not self, you are the self, ever untouched, ever unaffected by the 3 bodies and the 5 sheets. Just as the seer is untouched by what is seen, or just as a sword is unaffected by its cover, okay? Because in the case of the 5 sheets, or koshas, sheets is the cover of the sword. The sword is never affected, and this is another important point to understand, is that there is a connotation in this world, sheets. Sheets is that by which we for safety, we we put the sword, you know, when the warriors, they used to fight this war, they used to keep the sword on the sheets. So the sheet seems to cover literally cover the sword. But in the case of the self, we say that those 5 different levels of experience, it hides the self such as if it's covering the self. So this is something that we need to also bring to light and understand that the self cannot be ever covered by any one of those experiences. And the misidentification with any of those experiences never really covers the self, okay? It covers the mind of the jiva. It's what we call a vidya, the veil of ignorance, you know? This vidya is going to somehow blind the jiva or is going to dull the mind of the vidya. You don't say dull the mind. The mind is dull, but how you say? So?
Veiled.
Yeah, let's keep this word veil. So it veils the mind of the jiva to the extent that they think that we may think like, I say, well, where I'm going to find this self, okay? If it's not my body, if it's not my thought, my emotions, my feeling, if it's not my intellectual notions and ideas and concepts and actions and resolutions, so where I'm going to find the self? Where is this I? So as if those different 5 levels of human experience or beingness would cover the self, but the self is never covered because the self is that conscious subject, conscious principle, living conscious principle that is present all before, during, and after all of those different levels of experience come and go. But the self is that conscious principle witnessing and saying, I am fat today, I am hot. Ooh, well, look how I'm today. It's very hot here. It seems I'm in Spain. So I am hot, I am cold, I'm tall, I am depressed, I'm happy, I'm blissful. So all of that is a certain level of ignorance that somehow veils the mind, the intellect of the jiva, but it does not really covers the self. It apparently covers the self, okay, but does not really cover. The self is self-luminous. It's hidden in open space, as the proverb says. No? There is a proverb says, hidden in open space. Is that how it says? Vidya,
Plain sight.
yeah, in open sight. Yeah, the self.
In plain sight.
Yeah, it's never covered, it's never hidden. Okay? Let me see if there is something. We did not cover certain things here. Discrimination between yourself and the body-mind requires you to continuously monitor your thoughts, because in life, every interaction will be supporting and reinforcing. Avidya is going to be reinforcing those misidentifications with our experiences. So discriminating ourselves from the 5 sheets, okay, requires a certain discipline of monitoring our mental, our intellectual ability to understand what's happening and discriminating the self from all this experience. So we need to continuously do this sadhana of discrimination, monitoring our experience, because in life, every interaction is going to be reinforcing those identifications with the body, with the pranas, with the mind, emotions, with the intellect. Every experience with the world is going to be feeding to these different levels of ignorance. Therefore, what we need to do is we need to constantly feed the mind with the scriptural knowledge of Vedanta, of the Upanishads. The scriptural knowledge needs to be there feeding and somehow, how you say, offsetting the day-to-day level of activity. We have the word that we're going to be saying, yes, oh, I'm very hot today, and we are distracted. Say, I'm very, very hot. In that very moment, I think I'm the body. I think that I am my physiological system, that my system is not cooling me down enough, and so on. So all those levels of identifications, misidentification, can only be offset by the constant sadhana of self-inquiry, of identifying yourself with the self, discriminating the self from the not self. That's what it means. We cannot interact with other people from the standpoint of, no, I'm never hot. So Ramji is a strange type. The first time I met him in India, I made a simple mistake, a basic mistake. I never again did that mistake. I asked him, how are you doing? How are you today, Ramji? He looked at me as if I was crazy and say, what are you talking about? I'm the self. I'm always good. I'm always full. Okay? Don't ask me. The implied meaning was like, don't ask me stupid questions. Okay? I'm the self. I'm always good. So we cannot talk on those terms with everybody. If we start talking like that with people at work or with our family members or wife or brothers and neighbors, so we're going to get ourselves in trouble. Everybody's going to say, oh, there is something wrong with that family, with that. So therefore, we need to use the common language, which is totally based on ignorance. But we use the language knowing that, how are you doing today? Oh, I'm very good. The air conditioning is on, therefore I feel refreshed. What? The self never feels refreshed or hot or sweaty or anything. Okay, but we say so knowing that I'm referring to the body, my secondary identity, that tries to transact in this sub-order reality called mithya. So we need to know when we use the language of ignorance, knowing that it's just a tool so that we can transact in the world, so that we don't keep reinforcing the different levels of avidya. We need to keep the mind on the scriptures until this knowledge is really, really hard and fast, as we say. When we find ourselves say, we better stop and ask what I am referring to. Am I referring to the Paramatma or Jivatma? Yeah? To the experience knowing entity called the Jiva, or I'm referring to Brahman or the self, limitless conscious existence. Every time we mention we need to know from which platform we are uttering these words. Okay? Very interesting to see in the Gita that Lord Krishna goes through the entire Gita talking about the I on different levels, sometimes as a just regular jiva, as Arjuna's friend. Okay? Some other time he refers to the I as Ishwara, the Lord of the manifest universe, the lawgiver, the one who delivers the results of one's action, the one that governs everyone's experience of life. Sometimes he used the I referring to that. And in some other times, in those Jnana Yoga sections of the Gita, he used the I referring to Brahman, to Paramatma, to the self, the limitless conscious existence self. Okay? So the same way, time we say I, we need to somehow understand which I we are referring to. And we have reference of all kinds. We say I to my wife. I say I from a different angle. I say I as I the husband. when I say I to my father, I say I from the standpoint of I, the son. No? If I have a company and I have employees, when I say I to my employees, I say as I as the boss. I as the boss, I say this and that, and so on. So the I is a very simple word we say all the time, and we need to understand what we mean by this I. When we know when we refer as the self or the not self. If recognize the identification alone is not, but this is very interesting, recognizing this misidentification with the not self is not enough to free the jiva from samsara, okay? Recognize this identification with the not self is not enough. It's not enough to negate it. Walks through the supporting logic again and again, and most important, the logic presented by this analysis of the 5 levels of ignorance. Walks through the supporting logic again and again, and most importantly, claim your identity as the self while doing so, okay? So we recognize the not self, and we keep in mind this scriptural knowledge fresh and alive in our minds, and we keep making a stand in consciousness as consciousness. We need to disidentify from the not self and identify as the self, with the self, as the self. After all, we are after the understanding of these two intertwined orders of reality. We are not interested in denial, in denying Jiva, Ishvara, and Jagata. So this is also very interesting. We want to be free, and freedom is possible for the Jiva. And the Jiva is an apparent entity living in an apparent order of reality called Mithya. Okay? So therefore, we don't want to deny Mithya. We don't want to say, no, this is not real, this is non-existent, this is just an appearance, this is just a mirage. Denial is not going to free the jiva. A lot of people believe that the path of denial is the path to freedom, just to say that nothing ever exists, the jiva does not exist, Jagata does not exist, there are no teachings, there are no scriptures, there's nothing. All there is consciousness. That's true. But that does not free us, the poor jivas, attached and identified with one's experience in Mithya. For that, we need to understand both orders of reality, claiming our primary identity while maintaining our identity as a jiva and interacting with the world, because it's unavoidable. It's absolutely unavoidable. So, is everybody with us? Everybody with me?
Yeah.
Yep.
So all of these different experiences, they are just objects appearing within the scope of my conscious awareness, my conscious existence, okay? So everything is but an object of experience to the self. The second thing to understand is that everyone that's of these emotions, thoughts, and experience, they were not present, and they will eventually go away. But the self is the only principle that is before, during, and after any thought, emotion, or any circumstance. The self is always ever present. We all know that. We keep it in mind. The third thing is that any thought and emotion depends on matter to exist, which in turn depends on consciousness to exist. But you are independently existent. You are consciousness itself. For all these reasons, you cannot be any one of these sheets. Okay? So all of these sheets belongs to the realm of Nitya, they are all what we call energy and matter. When it comes to the food body, it becomes what we call matter. Okay? When we just rise up a little bit, we go to the pranic energies, the vital air sheets. There we are already dealing with energy, and then we go to the subtle bodies, more energy, and then we go into the intellect, and then we go mind, the intellect, and causal body. So we are talking about very subtle energies. All of these energies are fundamentally matter. It's inert matter. So there is only one conscious principle in which all of these different matters, energies, they come, remain for some time, and they go. All of that is just energy. That's the point of this logic here. What is it? Yeah, all these thoughts, emotions, and experience depend on matter to exist, which in turn depends on consciousness. But you, consciousness, are independently existent consciousness itself. So as we know, consciousness is that in which experience appears, and experience is nothing but consciousness under the spell of Maya appearing as either energy or matter. Okay? Energy or matter is all below the line of Maya. It's all phenomenal object. It's fundamentally inert. And the only principle that is self-conscious and self-existent is I, you, consciousness. Okay? We cannot be any of these matters, any of these different experiences. This line of inquiry can and must be applied to every instance, to every identification with any one of the 5 sheets or the 3 bodies. It goes in 3 ways: discrimination between the real and the unreal, misidentification with the unreal, and identification with the real. This is very interesting. I like this, this statement. It's basically, I picked it up from Shimaya. Shimaya presents the sadhana, our inquiry, our investigation, our spiritual effort towards moksha, freedom, as a process of discriminating the self from the not self, that disidentify our intellect or mind with the not self and identify with the self. So we discriminate. The whole process of Vedanta is about discriminating what's the self and not self, realizing that our mind, our intellect has been identified with the not self. We disidentify from the not self, and we need to identify with the self as the self. So there's 3 stages. Identification with the real, misidentification with the unreal, and previously discrimination. We need to know what is real and unreal. We need to know what is knowledge and ignorance before we can release ignorance and hold on to Ishvara's true, pure knowledge. Self-knowledge, in other words. Self-knowledge is freedom. And once the identification with the not-self has been recognized and released through understanding, it's important to assert our identification as the conscious subject principle, the self, which is unaffected by the sheets and the bodies. In fact, that's the whole point of discrimination, to reestablish our true identity, which we seem to have forgotten. And then there is a little, I brought in the statement that, I don't know, some of these statements Ranji created, they brought into the Sampradaya, and some not. I'm not sure about this one. He likes to say, fake until you make it. I think you all have heard that, right? Fake until you make it. Yeah? So the whole point of discrimination is to reestablish your true identity, which you seem to have forgotten. How? So just keep in mind that you are the self and fake it until you make it. So this can be misidentified, misunderstood, because fake until you make it does not mean that we go around telling everybody, hey, I'm the self, I am the self, I'm the self, I'm the enlightened one, I'm free, and so on, like we used to do, people used to do around Papa G. Papa G would say, would give somebody some reinsurance, or how you say?
Reassurance.
Reinsurance. It would give some reinsurance. Yes, this is it. But the self is exactly this experience, and you are it. And then the person would go all over the place. I am the self, I'm the self, I got it from Papa G, and so on. No. Fake until you make it means you, internally, you just keep it in mind and keep telling yourself, I am the self, and I'm whole, full, and complete. Nothing can really affect me. Therefore, take it easy, relax, okay? Because nothing ever touch that what I am as pure, limitless consciousness. So this is what means fake until it make. This is what I mean, make and stand in awareness as awareness, establishing my true identity, retaining my true identity as the self, okay? So fake until you make it. At first, it may seem disingenuous to say, I am in limitless non-dual consciousness, but it's actually the fact, it's the truth. Ramji likes to say that. At the beginning, it makes feel like, oh, it feels so fake because, I'm afraid, I'm attached, I'm insecure, and how can I say I am the self? So at the beginning, it may be a little bit strange. It may sound like phony or disingenuous to say I am limitless. But since that is a fact, okay, we can always say, yes, I am free, limitless consciousness, but sometimes I forget it. But who gives a damn? I am free, limitless consciousness. And over, again, I need to assert it to myself. Okay? We don't assert it to others, we assert it to ourselves. Over time, by negating the not self and asserting yourself as the real self, limitless consciousness, the back of ignorance is broken and who you are becomes clear, perfectly clear to you. This is what we call nididhyasana, by the way. It's a constant application of self-knowledge, constant remembrancing of the scriptural knowledge that asserts my true nature, my true identity as free consciousness. So we just keep doing this nididhyasana through all our day-to-day experience of life, interaction of life. In the background, there is this sadhana, okay? That I am free. I am the light of consciousness, illuminating my experience, illuminating my mind and my intellect, allowing my mind to make decisions, allowing my sense organs to see what's going on and to feel and to hear and so on. So this is conducive to moksha or freedom or enlightenment, howsoever you want to put it. So we need to stick to the knowledge and we need to do our sadhana, even if at the beginning it feels like people often, they tell me like, so I know I'm consciousness, I know that I'm free and so on, but somehow I have a problem because I find myself still suffering and I still running for what I want and running to avoid what I don't want. I find myself victim of my desires and aversions. Okay, and I get afflicted, I get frustrated. So I often tell the people, it doesn't matter. This is the road. The road to moksha is like that. You may fall 100,000 times, but you stand up and you assert again and again, I'm free, limitless consciousness. Okay? This is something that we may call perseverance, you know, or how you say in English? Persevering? Yeah?
Perseverance.
Perseverance, persistence, you know, you never give up. You hold to this knowledge because you know that's truth. It's just some vasanas are going to be pushing us around and trying to force us to betray this knowledge, okay? To neglect this knowledge, but you say, fuck it, you know, I know who and what I am, and I don't give a damn to these vasanas. I keep going back. I stand up, and again, I make a stand in consciousness as consciousness. And this is the way we do our nididhyasana. Of course, we need to keep making good use of the scriptural knowledge, because the scriptural knowledge is extensive and it's going to look at ignorance from all angles. And then it's very nice and very important to understand the way ignorance sneaks in again and again and traps us in some experience that are totally based on ignorance of our true nature. All right. So we then go into the 3 states of experience. So what are the 3 states of experience? They are waking, the dream, and the sleep states. So we all know that there is nothing in life but these 3 states, okay? We could almost say that our experience of life are nothing but those 3 states. We measure our life yearly, you know, but our calendar is yearly. It could as well be just like the 3 states rotating themselves over and over again. Okay? We are these 3 states, we experience these 3 states through the 24 hours every day. Another way to objectify the not self is to think of it as experience in general. Okay? So these 3 states of experience, the awaken, dream, and sleep, as it says, is nothing but different objects of experience appearing to I, consciousness. Consciousness, I experience the 3 states of experience. The experience, the 3 states, they are objects appearing to me. Okay? This is a different angle or level of discriminating the self from the not self. Now, this analysis, we're going to discriminate the self, not from the 3 bodies, not from the 5 koshas, which is a different way to subdivide the 3 bodies. Now we're going to discriminate the self from the different states of mind. The jiva appears having 3 different states, mental states, or states of experience. And we are going to use these different levels of experience to discriminate the self, to isolate the self from those variable circumstance, experience, factors, okay? So there is another way to objectify the not self, which is to think of all experience in general as an object. So if we know that experience itself is an object, and then I say, okay, let's go and just as if I put it all in a bulk, I discriminate myself from all experience. So this is a very simple way to do the sadhana. And then some people say, oh, if that's so, why we have to go into all these complications of analyzing the 5 sheets and the 3 bodies and the 3 states? So because the more we look into ignorance, the more immunized we are from ignorance. But if you have a simple mind, just keep in your mind that there are 2 factors in operation. One is subject appearing to the subject, objects appearing to the subject. Objects in general can be all put as in a bulk as experience. Experience is an object. Okay, and then if I discriminate myself from all experience, I'm discriminating myself from the not self at the very, very roots, so base of the experience level that brings forth all this nuance of different experience. Okay, experience in general is divided into awakening, dream, and deep sleep. So let's make a compromise and divide experience in three so that we can more effectively discriminate the self from its different states of experience. Okay? The discrimination between yourself and experience is I cannot be what I experience because experience itself is a never-changing unconscious object known to me. I cannot be any of my experience. I cannot be the most wonderful, mystical experience, spiritual experience. Okay? All this sublime yogic experience of samadhi and this expansion of consciousness and love and oneness, all experience is but an object appearing within the scope of my conscious awareness. Therefore, if I discriminate myself from all experience, I'm good to go. I just keep doing that. But it's easier said than done. Therefore, we go into all these nice, we break down experience, in a way that we can more easily identify where Maya tricks us. Discrimination between the self and the experience is I cannot be what I experience. Anything that I experience is not me because the I cannot be the object and the subject. Okay? An object is anything other than the I. It's anything that can be seen, known, perceived, objectified. So an object cannot be the subject. So if I discriminate myself from any and all experience, I am free from the experience. I cannot be the experience because experience is an ever-changing. It has a beginning, a middle, and end. It comes and it goes, and it changes, it modifies from moment to moment. And I have already understood that there is this background factor, principle, call it whatsoever you want to call, which is unchanging. The same way space never changes, never touched. The same way light is never affected. And while it reveals, it shines and illumines and reveals everything. I, the self, I never change. I have no beginning, I have no end. Having established that by the means of pure knowledge, pure logic and knowledge, I know that all experience is transient. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Therefore, it cannot be the I, the self. Therefore, I can just say anything that changes is not me. And I'm in a very good position, in a very good place when I say, no, I do things, but I know that anything that appears to me is an object, and I know that's an object. Why? Because they change. But there is a principle that never changes. Therefore, I'm good, I'm free. Every experience requires consciousness. So it depends on me, but I don't depend on any object. Object comes, restays, changes, modifies, goes. If there is no object, like in the state of deep sleep, I remain. Conscious existence remains. Okay, I'm free. All objects depend on me. I'm free and independent from all objects. Objects are unconscious matter. Known to me. Every experience requires consciousness. Consciousness not only with the aid of Maya and its power, inherent power, it assembles the universe of name, colors, and forms, and it reveals, and it knows, and everything depends, it maintains, it sustains, it destroys, it recycles everything, and consciousness is the only independent, free principle that pervades the substratum of this meteor world without ever being a fact. So knowing that, I know that everything that changed is an objective experience. Therefore, I know I am free from any and all experience appearing in my conscious awareness. I am the witness of all experience. I am none of any possible experience whatsoever, great, wonderful, or terrible they may be. It has nothing to do with what I am, who I am. So the awakened state, let's looking a little bit into the awakened state. It's the self-experience through a body-mind complex. So the consciousness experience through the physical body, okay, having its sensory instruments, its instruments of actions, having all the field of action around. So experience through the body into the field of action, the Dharma field, we have the Jiva, called the waker, the awakening entity, experience the awakened state through its physical body-mind complex. So, and what is this state? The state of experience when the gross body, the physical body is present and the sense organs perceive sense objects. The sense organ, the organs of action, they perceive the object and response to the field, okay, on a moment-to-moment basis. So it experience when the gross body is present, the body has to be present, and the sense organs, together with the instrument, the organs of actions, they are present, perceiving and respond to the field of action through their respective physical instruments of perception and instruments of action, okay? So when the self seems to identify with the gross body and its experience in the field called the Dharma field, the objective field projected by Maheshwara, when the self identifies with this physical body and the experience through this body-mind complex into the field, it's called the waker or Vishwa. So Vishwa Jiva or waker is the self experience the field through its body-mind complex. Unless you know that you are the self, the awakened state seems real, and the person in the awake state is who you think you are. So unless we know something other than the three bodies, other than the three levels of human mental states or the three states of experience, the three states of experience and the three bodies, unless we know that there is something other or beyond or before, howsoever we want to put it. So unless we know that there is a different order of reality sustaining and maintaining and governing these different levels of experience, these three states of mind, okay, unless we know that, we definitely will believe that we are the awaker. So the awaker, this level of experience, is the one we are mostly identified with. We build our sense of identity through the awakening state. It's through the awakened state interacting with the objective field of Vishwara, we manage to develop a sense of identity that we call the ego, the one that is identified with as a doer of actions in the field, the altar of my thoughts, and so on. So unless we know that there is something such as pure, limitless consciousness, that which infuses the body and its three states with conscious existence, with life. So we are very lucky that we heard the good news. We heard that there is something such as the self. So we are not totally fooled by Maya to believe that I am the awaker. So this identification as the waker, as this waking entity, the visual, the one that interacts during the waking state, is what we call universal error. Okay, it's a universal misapprehension of the true nature of the self as consciousness alone, and the consciousness alone takes itself to be the doer of actions in the field of action called the Dhamma field. So this is what we call avidya, the universal ignorance, universal error, universal misidentification that all human jivas experience as I am the body, I am the waker experiencing the world in my state called the waking state. No? But can this be true? Aside from the previously mentioned reasons that you cannot be what you experience. So there we go, already. So we have already a tool to just dismiss such piece of ignorance. The ignorance that says I am the waker and I am the doer, I am the organizer, I am the one who has to keep things in place and get things happening. I am the go-getter and so on. So this notion is taken care just by the simple tool that says that I cannot be anything that I experience. And this awakening state is something that is known to me. So we all know the three states. We all experience those three states. Yeah? I mean, well, we're gonna get there on the deep sleep, but the awakening states and the dream state we all experience. So then, as we have read, clearly determined by logic, I cannot be anything that I experience because I'm not an experience. I am the experiencer, the true fundamental experiencer as consciousness, and I am of the nature of all pervasiveness, of fullness. Okay? There is only me in reality. So that piece of knowledge alone takes care of this ignorance, but let's just look a little bit deeper. And besides that, awake state being nothing but an experience. Let's take the analysis of the awake state a little further. So its awake state is just an object of experience. I cannot be what I experience, therefore the awake state is not what I am, therefore I cannot identify this I as the awaker, okay? But if that alone is not enough, let's take a good look and analyze a little deeper the awake state. In the awake state, the external world is present. So we have no doubt about that. What is this external world? Is this superimposition on consciousness. It's produced by Maya. Maya Ishwara produced the universe of name, colors, and forms. So this is a very objective reality, apparent reality, that presents itself to us every morning when we get up. We find ourselves, no? Every day, what's the first thing that appears to us? No? Our body. No? And then from the body, the mind, the first thought that comes, time to go, find that, or anything like that, and then a huge field of different experience comes through that. So the first thing is the external world, rise in the morning. So we never, we never mistake ourselves to be certain parts of the external world, like a tree, the bed, the chair, my dog, anything that starts coming as the awaker awakes. We never identify with any aspects of my field of experience, okay? But we make a fundamental mistake. we begin awakening, and then we find this objective creation of names, colors, and forms, all kinds of objects and thoughts and so on, and we never take them to be what we are, my true I, my true self. But there is a fundamental universal mistake that we take this body that wakes up with us every day in the same bed. We just mistakenly, we take the body to be the I. Okay, this is the nature of the awaker. Okay, in the awakened state, the external world is present. And while you never mistake yourself to be different parts, pieces, so objects in your world, like the bed and the chair and the dog and the trees outside the window, anything, you don't identify with any of those things, but there is a fundamental mistake or error. We identified with the closest and most intimate that appears before our mind. It's not even our eyes, it's our concept. You can have your eyes closed, and still you wake up in the morning and you know that I, the body, am awakening. I may have a blindfolder, I don't want to see the sun, I want to sleep a little longer, but immediately I see the bodies in my mind as I, the body. So this fundamental error or mistake is universal, is what we call avidya. It's produced by Maya. But we need to ask ourselves, how is the body known to me? So we are all Vedanta experts here. So it's nothing new to us. But again, we need to ask, how is this body that I'm so concerned that every morning I look into the mirror to see if there are more wrinkles, if I have less hairs, and if I lost some more weight and so on. How this body is known, So how is all objects known to me? How is this body known to me? So they are all known to me through the sense organs, in the mind. So they are known to me through my sense organs and the mind. The mind knows the body. Okay, the physical wise, if you look to the parts of the body, it's going to see the bodies as well. The hand is going to touch you, say, yes, it feels like my body. It should be my body. Let me open my eyes and see, wow, it is my body. Okay, let's make sure. Let me look into the mirror. You say, no, it is my body. I know this guy. Okay, so it's an object known to me. Okay, they are both known to me. The dog, the chair, everything is known to me. So we know everything, and we know the body because we can see it, we can feel it, we can sense it, we can even see its reflection in the mirror. So all of these are objects of perception, okay, experienced through the sense organs. So we feel the leaves of the trees with the same organ of skin that you will feel the hair of your head. So we can touch the chair and anything, and we're gonna feel everything the same way I feel my hair, my nose, and my skin. So the sense organs are the same for all perception of objects. The mind is the same, that is going to connect the dots and draw some conclusions about, so this is a chair, this is what it is. Okay, oh, this, I hear that, it must be my cat. So by looking at our experience in this way, we can see that the body, the dog, the chair, and the tree share the same level of existence. Okay? My very body belongs to the same order of reality, the physical order of reality, called the physical world experienced by the awaker. Everything belongs to the same order of reality. The body, our body, the body of a cat, the body of a chair, every matter, every physical object belongs to the same order of reality. So that is where we are going with this analysis. they are just thoughts. They are just thoughts / object of perception. Everything. And that, of course, includes our human body. It's made out of food. Everything else is made out of the 5 elements. Okay? Everything is made out of the 3 energies, 3 qualities, and the 5 elements. So we can, now another analysis, this is very nice. We can feel, suppose we are in love, we have a beloved one, and we can wake up in the morning, we can touch the body of our beloved. Okay? So what is the difference between my body and the body of my beloved? So remember the analysis of the 5 koshas, it's only food covered up by skin. Okay? So we are dealing here with the same experience of touching some bag of bones and flesh and blood and chemicals or howsoever, or like Ranji likes to say, we are just touching a different meat tube or sausage or hot dog or something like that. The experience is exactly the same through our sense organs. Okay? For some, very slight difference in texture, form, and color at the most. Okay? But fundamentally, it's all, you are just touching some different aspects of the 5 elements put together in a certain bag, shape, called an animal life. In either case, you did not do anything to create your body or any other of these bodies that you experience and know. We have not done anything to create my body. I never create even a cat. I never create a mosquito, a fly. We have never done anything. So we know that they exist. They fundamentally, they are made out of matter. They are somehow enlivened by a principle, force, some energy, some consciousness, or howsoever we want to look at it, so that they become alive, they become mobile. So we see that there is a common thread between all these different bodies. They belong to the same order reality. All these bodies are created and maintained by the Lord Ishvara. But due to this fundamental misunderstanding, I call the body I sleep with and I wake up with every morning. It's boring. I mean, I would like sometimes to wake up with a different body for a change. But no, every time it's the same body with the same body pain and so on. In spite of that, every morning when I get up with this body I sleep with, I say, my body. So, what rights I have to determine this body as my body? Okay, which is the construct assembled by the 5 elements, okay, covered up by skin on a different shape and color, slight difference, okay, which was not made by me, which is not maintained by me, and yet I have got into this fixation to believe that this is my body. Okay, this is the point here. So what knows the perception of the sense organs? Now we go a little bit deeper. So the percept organs are going to understand that all of this is just the 5 elements wrapped up, packed up in a different way. We don't create it, we don't sustain, we don't maintain, we don't know anything about its expiration date. Okay, but yet we say it's mine and I want it's my possession and I have some control over it and so on. Okay, very deeply rooted ignorance, identification with the meat tube. But what knows the perceptions of our sense organs that have established that this is my body and that is your body? So what knows these perceptions, these perceptive, cognitive, or conclusions, okay, through these sense organs? What know these sense, the sensory perceptions? What knows? Are not the sense just another object of experience? Do the sense organs have a certain self-consciousness so that they can know me, or they are only known by me? So who knows the perceptions? Who knows all these organs of perceptions and the phenomenon called experience that comes through these perceptions? Okay? Who knows? It has to be the mind, because sensory perception is only possible when the mind is functioning. So the mind is subtler than perception. Perception is, although it belongs to the subtle body, but it's right there, yeah, side by side with the pranas. Okay, it's going to be a little denser than the mind. The mind, therefore, being subtler, is the knower of those perceptions. Okay, so the mind knows the perception, the mind feels and experiences the perceptions and experiences the objects that were somehow gained through these perceptive organs. The mind needs to be functioning. If for some reason you don't think that I am the body, you almost certainly think you are the mind. So we are going now into another difficult, hardwired piece of ignorance, which is the identification with the mind that perceives the world of matter, the world of the five elements, the world of the physical universe, the physical bodies, the world as my body. Okay? The mind is that by which I know my body and I know all other bodies. So if I determine that I'm not the body because the body is an object known to me, the body is just inert matter, the body by itself, it just it dies, it's inert without a certain principle, conscious principle, or in truth is the mind, which gives life to the physical body. Without the mind, the body is just dead meat that needs to be disposed as soon as possible. Yeah? But if I determine that I am not the physical body, because the physical body, my physical body is no different than any other body, so now I have a conclusion that I know that by the means of my mind. So now we run in a different level, a little subtle aspect of this ignorance of the jiva, of the awaker. If he discards the body as not real, he still has to deal with the fact that he believes that the body is known to the mind through the sense organs. Therefore, I know the sense organs, I know the physical body, and I am the knower. The mind is the true self. So these are all unconscious mechanisms that we go by. So Maya deceives, tricks us. Okay. So if for some reason you don't think you are the body, you almost certainly will think that I am the mind, because the mind perceives the physical body through the sense organs, and the mind is the knower, therefore I am the mind. But we have to ask ourselves, how is the mind known to me? So how is the mind known to me? The answer is that the mind is known by you, consciousness or awareness or the self. And the mind is known to consciousness. The mind is known to I, the self, to you, the self. If the mind wasn't something known to you, you would not be able to say that it was there. We know that there is a mind, There are some people that they don't like to believe in things that are not tangible. In science, you see a lot of, now science has got into exploring more the invisible world of energy and so on. But generally speaking, they like to be more objective, analyzing tangible things, you know, even if they go into the subatomic aspect of matter, still through those instruments, they find some tangible ways to measure, you know, those phenomenal objects, those matters, you know. So the mind is this invisible principle that we know that exists. How do you know? You have never seen a mind. So what color is your mind? I know the color of my mind. Does anybody know the color of your mind? Okay. No, the mind has no color. The mind has no shape. The mind has no texture. The mind has no smell. There's no taste. We cannot know the mind by the sense organs because the sense organs are below the jurisdiction of the mind, below this realm of the mind. And we cannot know through the sense organs. The mind is invisible, but we know that there is such a thing as the mind. If the mind wasn't something known to you, you would not be able to say for sure that I have a mind. Yes, I have a mind. Everybody knows I have a mind without ever seen a mind. Or in most cases, never even understanding the mind. What is the mind? Huh? This means that the mind and its thoughts and feelings and emotions and perceptions are objects known to you, and therefore it cannot be I, cannot be me. Okay? We know that there is something such as the mind. The mind wakes up with the awakening state. The body wakes up with the awakening state, and the mind comes along with the body. And then we know that the body is an object known to me, and I know that the mind, this invisible, subtle body, the mind, I know it's a woke up. How do I know? Because I see, I know, and I experience the world, the physical material world. This means that the mind and its thoughts and feelings and perceptions are objects known to you, and therefore it cannot be you. If you can follow the logic here, you can negate your identification with the entire waking state, because the waking state is made out of the identification. I, the body, I, the mind. But there may still be a doubt. You might wonder, if there is a self, and if the self is the witness of the mind, and the mind is going to witness the physical material world and the subtle world of thoughts, feelings, and emotions, if there is the mind, if there is the self, so we may question, and this is a not so uncommon, this question, we may wonder in question, so, and what knows the self? The answer is that there is no knower of the self, because the self is made out of pure knowledge, pure knowingness. The self is self-knowing, it's self-luminous. Okay? It's knowingness itself. It knows itself and knows anything that comes into the scope of its instruments of knowledge called the jivas. Okay? So the self is self-knowing, is self-luminous. There is only one self. There is no other self that is going to know this self. The self is self-revealing, self-knowing. It does not require anything else to be known or to know itself, because the self is knowledge itself, the knowledge that makes the universe known. The knowledge that builds, the assembles the universe and makes it known. That it is the knower, the known, and the knowledge. It's the Trinity. Look at your own experience. Do you need anything to know that you are conscious other than the fact that you are conscious? That's a good one. We don't need anything to prove us that we are conscious. Oh, no. I mean, I want to know. This whole thing about consciousness needs to be proved. Please, prove to me that I'm conscious. So the simple fact that I'm asking someone to prove to me that I'm conscious is already evidence that I'm consciously asking somebody. They say, hey, am I conscious or not? No, prove to me that I'm conscious. So consciousness is self-evident. We never need to ask anybody, I am consciousness, I am conscious. No, because it is self-evident. We don't need to ask anybody to prove us that we exist either. Existence is self-existing. Okay? We are self-knowing and we are self-existing. There is no need for any other factor to validate or to prove to me that I exist. I exist because the simple fact that this question rises in the mind, do I really exist? Okay, it's enough proof that I exist. And I'm existing, questioning my own existence. I mean, it sounds crazy, but there are a lot of people out there that thinks that way. They may think that way because they find themselves spiritual and they think that this is a good way to conduce. It's a good sadhana to produce self-knowledge and moksha. Okay? But you may have this due to a defect in your mind. I know somebody close to me that had a problem. It's a mental condition called psychosis or paranoia. And the main problem, the main pattern there was the belief that this person did not exist. I don't exist. It went on for more than a year. And now this person stopped questioning. I don't know how sure this person she is about her existence, but up to a few months ago, she still had doubts. She was not totally convinced as in the beginning that she did not exist, but she was still having doubts. So, but anybody with a healthy mind understands that if I have a doubt about my existence, it's enough proof that I exist, because I could not doubt my existence unless I exist. So we are self-conscious, we are self-existence. We are conscious, therefore we exist. We exist because I'm conscious enough to know that I exist. But if you still think there is something that knows the self other than yourself, being self-known and self-existence, okay, you run into the problem of infinite regression. In other words, if you say there is something that knows the self, it can then be asked what knows that something that knows the self. Then we go in that regression that has no end, that is the most absurd way to look into consciousness, into the self, into Atma as something that there is always some other seer or knower behind, which is absolutely, how you say, illogical. In other words, if you say there is something that knows the self, it can then be asked, what knows that something that knows the self? I say, oh no, there is another principle here. I had this experience. I was the knower. I was consciousness. I was seeing everything. I mean, probably you heard about those descriptions. People describe this epiphany. They get conditioned by this knowledge. And then I felt this other consciousness here, seeing my consciousness, and my consciousness was seeing. No, there is only one consciousness. Is of the nature of non-duality, one without a second. There is only one consciousness. It's self-conscious, and it's the only source of consciousness. Because if there is another consciousness behind my consciousness, and then the logic here is, then what is this consciousness that knows that there is another consciousness behind? Is it? So this other level of consciousness is nothing but a projection in my mind, and it's all seen by the only conscious subject principle there is. Okay, non-dual. The point is that it is not reasonably inquiry with no logical and no answer. So knowing consciousness existence stops with consciousness existence, because it is self-knowing, it is self-existent. It does not require another source to validate itself. Unless limitless non-dual self-knowing consciousness existence is the only conscious existence there is. Besides, if there was something that knew the self would become an object known to that thing. Yeah? You say, no, the self, we have to put our finger on the self and really see the self. I need to see. I heard that all statements of Upanishads say that the self cannot be known objectively. But yet, I'm not fully convinced. So, if there is something that knows the self then would have become what? An object of knowledge. An object of knowledge. And sees being or having its status as the only conscious subject there is. The moment that we reduce the self to an object, and then we are really lost, because the self, this conscious subject principle, have lost its status as the light in which presence things are known and revealed. The revealed and known, the only subject conscious principle. Now we reduce it to an object because we brought another supposed consciousness or self. So this is not possible, because in that case the self would change. But the self in truth does not change. Furthermore, the self would lose one status to become an object. It would be changing, and we know that the self, we know by the statements of all those Upanishads mantras, that the self is a karta. It never does anything. It's nirvikara. It never changes or modifies. Okay, we know that. And by following those analyses present in our scriptures, such as the ones we are having now, we get to see clearly by logic that the self is always present, never modifies or changes. Okay, so if the self would lose its status as the only subject principle to become an object, and then this other self would be the subject to later on be reduced to an object, and then it means the self would be changing, which is absurd. So it's always conscious, the conscious subject witnessing principle, and never in an unconscious object that is changing. It's impossible because the self does not change. Furthermore, there is no way for something to have two contradictory natures, like the subject and object. So we cannot have the self that is the only subject, the only knower, the only perceiver. We cannot be the self changing back and forth to be the knower and the known, the perceiver and the perceived, the subject and the object. If that happens, it means the whole logic, the whole science of consciousness called the Upanishads and Vedanta would be destroyed, which is not possible because there is no logic to sustain this argument. There's no way something could have two different natures. In the same way that the sun cannot be light and can be the dark, the same way the sun that cannot be hot and cold, the nature of the sun, the nature of the fire the fire is one of the elements having two fundamental natures. One is light and the other is heat. The same way, the fire or the sun cannot have the heat and cold and the light and darkness nature if it has contradictory natures, and then that thing cannot be itself anymore, because what holds its existence, it is nature, substantial nature, essential nature. If you destroy the essential nature of something, that thing is as if non-existent. Okay? So that is the point. That's the logic. The same way, the sun cannot be light and dark. So it's always the conscious subject witnessing principle and never the unconscious inert object. The self is the only consciousness there is. But getting back to our analysis on the awakening states, if the fact that the waker, the visual, and its experience is but an inert, ever-changing object known to you, the body and the mind, the body-mind complex, the physical body and the subtle body, they are objects of experience known to you, experienced, seen, perceived by you. So going back to our analysis of the awake state, the fact is that the awaker, the awaking entity and its experiences is but inert matter, ever-changing object, known experience to you. If that knowledge does not free you from your identification with the body and the mind, ask yourself, how can I be the awaker? How can I be this entity called the awaker, living my experience through the field, the tangible field, project and create by Ishvara, the Dharma field? How can I be awaker and establish my identity as the awaker, which is founded on the body-mind complex? How can I be the awaker if this awaker disappears as soon as I enter into the other two states of mind, the two mental states, the two states of experience known as the dream and the sleep state? So does anybody would like to say something, ask something, contribute with something? Steve. I don't know if Stephen has fallen asleep.
No, I'm here.
I had a picture of you that was fixed there. You were sitting like that. I said he went into beyond the awakening state. He went into sleep, and then he went into Nirvikalpa Samadhi.
I was just taking it all in on a sort of deeper level. Yeah, no, listen, it makes sense. If you can't, why should you identify with the waker? Maybe I should identify with the dreamer. I suppose that's, you could identify with the waker, you could identify with the dreamer, and you say, right, all my dreams are my reality.
Yeah, we're going to go into that, but this is a good point. You're anticipating here. So, I mean, if I'm so identified as the waker in my physical body, the instrument through which, and with the sense organ and so on, the mind, I become the waker. How about the other states, such as the dream? Because in the dream, there is an entity called the dreamer, and there are objects in that dream world. So why not to just forget about the awakened state and say, no, from now on I establish my identity as the dreamer. So the fact is that we are identified as well as the dreamer. But with the dreamer, we are identified only in the dream state through the dream body. We have these bodies by which we experience these different realms of experience. In the dream world, we need a dream body. So, and once we take in that dream body, or our physical body, turns to become a different instrument or means or vehicle of experience known as the dream. And then the dreamer begins to identify with the dream body. That's why in the dream, the dreamer with the dream body is always trying to protect its dream body. It's running from dangers and trying to avoid any possible adversity and so on. So we do identify, and when we are in the dream state, it feels to be very real, extremely real when we are there. And that's going to take us into a different conversation, because what is more real or more unreal? The dream world or the awakening world? So we're gonna go.
I mean, because the waking state has consistency, and like things that change one day remain changed the next day. There's a consistency to the waking world. Of course, it's much more convincing that that's real, because we can't escape from facts that don't change, or change and then remain changed. So the other thing is that we can only create karma in the waking state, right, and not in the dream state. Why is that then?
Yeah.
They're equal. That why is it we only create karma in the waking state?
Yeah, this is a good conversation, because the purpose of this analysis is to prove to the inquirer that these states are not real, not really real. But we are discussing here the fact that the physical, tangible universe, which is experienced by the awaker, is much more tangible, and it's much more stable, whereas in the dream, things are all the time changing very fast, and have our dream mind does not have much of a power to retain those experiences in our memory system as well. It keeps fading very quickly. So they are much more tangible, and we cannot really work our karma, as you said, through the dreams, because the dreams, they are not really a field of actions that allows us the opportunity to learn and grow, because the dreams are nothing but the impressions from our experience in the awakening state. So those experiences in the awakening state, when we have the Dharma field with everything at our disposal, so that is where we can exercise our intellectual discriminating faculty and do our sadhanas and grow and be free. So whatsoever we live through the awakening state, it leaves those impressions, mental, emotional impressions, and they are stored in our causal body. So during the night, the causal body projects those impressions, subtle body to project this dream world, which is projects out of one's mental, emotional impressions. But these impressions, they depended on the physical, material field created by Ishvara, the Lord. So in that sense, both these realities are not real, but the reality created by Ishvara, the field, the Dharma field, is much more tangible, therefore it's less unreal, okay? It feels much more real, because it is really a byproduct of the 5 elements, and it's assembled so beautifully, so intelligently, and it's governed by laws and so on. In the dream, no, there is nothing. It's just those mental, emotional memory that remains, and they start just firing and projecting this on the screen of our mind. So we cannot really work our karma through the dream states, because it's not based on the field presented by Ishvara, in which he says, okay, now here it is. You are back in here, and this is the field. Go and work your karma. And there, no, there we have a superimposition on the field of action, because all those impressions are subject to jivas, vasanas, and interpretations. So I may have a beautiful or whatsoever experience during the day, and you may have the same experience side by side with me. But my mind, my vasanas, my conditioning is going to interpret those experiences in a different way from you. Both of those impressions are going to flash in the night to produce a dream reality around those impressions. So my dream is going to be different than your dream, Vidya, for example, because we have different sets of vasanas, different ways we look into the world and experience and understand and apprehend what's going on. So the same experience for somebody may be okay, good, pleasant, and comfortable, and for other may be threatening and producing anxiety and discomfort. Okay, and those dreams are going to be different. The dream world is already a distortion of the initial projection of Maya Ishvara. Okay? So therefore, it's recycled. You're going to recycle the field, all the situations, our parabdha karma, the life presents itself. I go there, I interact with that world, but then I filter it, I recycle that through my psychic, my vasanas, and then eventually I project it in my dream. The dream is so subjective, and it's only related to my mindset, my subjectivity, my vasanas, my conditioning, my program. Okay. Therefore, it does not serve any purpose in providing us with spiritual growth, a field for spiritual growth, because it's just vasanas, you know, projecting themselves. My condition. If there is anything that the dream can provide us with, is some insights into the nature of this programming of this mind, because the nature of our mind is going to shoot this movie, which is the dream, and it has all to do with my conditioning, my mind, my program, my vasanas. And then I can, through those dreams, I can understand a little bit about this program, about these tendencies, these patterns, these samskaras, these mental, emotional contents in my subconscious mind. So if anything, it can provide us with this kind of insights. And as both some of you know, some of us know, Ramji did a lot of work around the dream and so on, as a means to pick up some insights into the nature of the mind. But as we both know, we all know, the purpose of Vedanta is not really to provide the jiva with deep insights into the nature of the mind, but it's to provide the jiva with the certainty of knowledge about the true nature of the jiva as consciousness alone. Okay? So, and moreover, as people get distracted trying to analyze these dreams, and when you're going to analyze these dreams, you cannot analyze this dream in deep sleep. You cannot analyze these dreams in the awakened state, in the deep sleep, and neither you can analyze these dreams during the dream. Because when you are dreaming, you don't know that it's a dream, and therefore you cannot analyze. People sleep with a notebook. When they wake up in the middle of the night, they try to take some notes to try to understand, make sense of those projections. So we cannot really make much of any of this in those two states. So therefore, we need to use our precious awakened state that have so many other things that we have to do to analyze dreams, which is a waste of our time and energy to some extent, you know, because in the awakened state, we better use it to work our karma as a good karma yoga, purify the mind, or discriminate in the self from the not self, the real from the unreal, the self from its experience and so on. We have better work to do. So that's the thing. So, but it serves in this analysis of the three states of the mind. It serves the purpose to discriminate the self from these three levels of experience that we're gonna go more and more into it next week. Does it cover your point, Vidya?
Yeah, I mean, although, I mean, it's interesting because, I mean, the way it sounds like that's more convincing about the waking state being more real in some way. You know, I think because, like you said, the dream state's very subjective, and of course,
Yeah.
it's the waking state's more real.
Yeah. Yeah.
But maybe it's easy for me to understand if I think that both those three states, I'm always the self in any of those three states.
Yeah.
And yeah, the self is, it's almost like I need to have the self as a reference point and not compare the dream state and the waking state, because they're just, it's hard to grasp that the dream state is as real or as unreal as the waking state.
Yeah. So they are both unreal. We could put it somehow like the waking state is the awaker, is consciousness dreaming to be the awaker, and then the sleep state is consciousness dreaming to or dreaming to be the sleeper. Both are dreams.
Yeah.
Because the truth is that it's a projection. Maya projects this universe, and then if we believe that this universe, our lives, history and experience are real, and then we are missing the point, because it's not create, it's not sustain, it's not maintain for us. We never really learn how to create a body or how to make it function and how to do things. Everything is done by Ishvara, as we know. So what's the reality of the jiva and its identification as the I, the body, mind, and I, reality, and so on? So there is not much consistency in that belief. So we need to resolve the jiva into Ishvara. And by doing so, we develop certain qualities to understand and to resolve Ishvara into pure limitless consciousness. And then how real is this projection called the universe? It is very unreal. Okay, it's a superimposition of consciousness. And the projection of the jiva is a projection over a projection, is recycling. There is a projection of Ishvara, and then jiva experiences this world, because jiva is the only experience entity there is. It's jiva, jagat, Ishvara. Jiva experience, he recycles it, processes it through its program, its vasana, and then it makes another projection. So, of course, this second projection, we know for sure that it's not real, it does not make much sense, and it's so fast. And when I wake up, I discover that it was just a dream. So the whole idea of enlightenment, of self-realization as awakening, is based on this notion that when the awaker understands that all there is Ishvara first, and consciousness first, and Ishvara and the field, Ishvara as the field second, and then he wakes up from the Mithya dream. Okay, one is the Mithya dream, and the other is the sleeper, the dreamer dream. So it's yeah, it does not serve much any purpose to the dreams. We moved into this new house, and I don't know why, but I'm not sleeping well, and I'm having weird dreams. And now we already we're more than a week in here. I don't know. I mean, I begin asking myself, so when it's going to start? When it's going to stop? Because usually at night I sleep well in the night, and I hear all kinds of weird dreams. Is that something with the walls or the house, or you know? But I mean, who cares? You know, I just get up a little time in the morning because I don't have a very nice night of sleep. It's as unreal as a good night of sweet dreams and deep sleep. No?
Yeah.
but it does affect the body mind to a certain extent. So we prefer to have a nice, sweet dreams as we always wish to one another, or just a lot of dreamless sleep to refresh the body and so on. But fundamentally, it's just our unconscious mind throwing up. Okay, it's a kind of throwing up, projecting something. We never know that to what degree it's just our mind, or if there is something to do with external environment, because sometimes we see even in the Vedic culture there is protection for everything. You have some lights, some so everything. You call your deities, you invoke them, and so on. When you go to bed, so you want protection because this invisible world is the world of energy. It's massive. It's overcrowded as well. We don't see them. But most important thing for us is to understand that it's all unreal. The mind is also an object, a period object known to us, and do our work, develop a certain mental, emotional strength against the circumstance, environment, external environments, and the experience of life, and develop this refinement of minds that allows us to do our nididhyasana. What's to do? That's the best game in town, right, Vidya?
Yes.
Hello, Trudy. Your mic is off.
Yeah, it says, okay, good morning. Sorry, I got up late.
Yeah, I haven't seen you. I just saw you now.
Yeah, I kept the camera off for a bit. Are you wrapping up your lecture now?
Yes, we are. It's already 6 p.m. here. Soon I'm gonna be having dinner.
Okay. May I ask a question?
Give me a moment. Yeah, let me take my medicine. Now, talking about circumstance, I'm still fighting my Lyme disease. And yes, I noticed that my eyesight was going really south, going down very fast. And then I ended up getting an appointment, went to see the doctor to discover that I have cataract. Relatively soon. So I may need a surgery 6 months and a year.
Happens to the best of us.
Yes, so there's no way. That's why we need to get strong mentally. We need to have this self-knowledge so that can humanize us with all adversities that come with old age.
Yeah, well, I hear it's a very successful surgery. So, Arlindo, I think you'll be okay with it.
Yeah.
So, may I ask a question? I know it may not be relevant to today's talk, but it's about, it's from page 22 of the Tattva Bodha copy that I have. And I don't know whose commentary this is. It wasn't posted on the front page, or it didn't have a front page. But it's from a section called "What's Self-Realized Person?"
Can you say it again?
Sorry, I've got the door open, so it's getting kind of noisy. The day is waking up here. This is from the Tattva Bodha. I don't know what copy it is, where I got this copy. There's nothing on the front page saying who's made the commentary either. But in this section called "What is a self-realized person?" the Jiva Mukta. And then it says, okay, someone who has, number one, realized that the self is limitless, that it doesn't cause me an issue. Number two, that the self and the world are not different. That causes me, I don't think I quite understand it. And number three, that the one who has this vision of the self, not a separate individual. Oh, number three is that the one who has this vision is the self, not a separate individual.
Yeah.
But I'm a little bit, I don't understand what the Advaita Vedanta arguments, or I don't want to use our word arguments, knowledge is about the self and the world are not different.
So you have a question about the second point?
Yeah, that second point, that the self and the world are not different. I have a feeling when you tell me, I'm going to say, oh yes, of course I know that. But right now when I'm reading that, I'm thinking like, I'm not sure how to, I can see that the self is empty of anything.
Self is what?
The self is empty or has no characteristics. Consciousness has no characteristics. And the world, if we just...
Yeah, you have to be careful with this word emptiness. The self is free of qualities and attribute. The self is not colored by the qualities of the gunas, okay? So
right.
Attributeless, but it's full, it's not empty. When we say that it's empty, and then we believe that when the word appears, the word is going to abstract the self. And we're going to say there is the self apart from the world, you understand? But they don't obstruct or contradict one another because they belong to different orders of reality. The self is full, and ultimately, the one who gains the knowledge that I am the self, and the self is limitless consciousness, okay? The one has to understand in the end that it appears at the second point that ultimately having negated the not self all through my sadhana, say this is not the self because it appears to me as something known to me. I cannot know myself, everything that I know. I cannot know myself as an object of knowledge. If I know something, it means there's something other than me. Therefore, I keep rejecting everything that appears in the world, in the in the scope of my conscious awareness. This is a tool to isolate, to discriminate, to separate the self, the subject, limitless principle, separate it from all objects. But it's just a tool. Without separating knowledge from ignorance, the self and the not self, we cannot really remember. I don't know if you were with us when we were saying the first step is to discriminate the self from the not self. Keep doing that by rejecting the not self. Identify the not self always as something other than the subject and rejecting it. But at the end, you understand that everything is but Brahman, everything is but the self or consciousness appearing by the power of its own Maya as the colorful universe made of names and forms. Okay, fundamentally, this knowledge needs to be extend to the whole universe. The Jiva Mukta is the one that knows all there is Brahman, and I am Brahman, and not I am Brahman, but you are Brahman, and everything and everyone is Brahman. This is the ultimate knowledge, okay? Everything, the flies, the insects, people that you love, people that you hate, if you hate somebody, everything is just Brahman or God or Paramatma, fundamentally. Okay, so this knowledge to be complete, it has to be extended to everything is but Brahman, as Nitya, appearing as the universe.
So is this statement, the self and the world are not different, it's kind of problematic to me because maybe the world are not different is some limitation in the translation or something?
Well, everything is the self but the self is not everything, okay? Thing is but the self. But the self is not limited by the named forms that are superimposed on the consciousness on self. Okay, everything that appears is only reality. It's just a projection or superimposition that appears not separate from the self. Although the self is none of those, but these things appear as not separate from the self. The simple example, so we have the gold. We have the gold. What is the substance of a gold ring? The substance of gold ring is gold, not the gold ring. Okay, we have several ornaments of gold. So the only true essential nature of all of those ornaments is gold alone. Okay, but yet it appears as a ring, as a hair, as a bracelet, as anything made out of gold. Okay, but there is one fundamental, true, essential, substantial truth about all of that. That is gold. Okay, so the gold does not depend on any of those names and forms made out of gold, but all these names and forms, they owe their existence to gold. If we remove gold, all these names and forms, they crumble, they lose their existence. But we can remove the names and forms and gold remains. So likewise, consciousness, the self, is the only reality. And the whole universe appears as if project on consciousness, on the screen of consciousness, and not separate from consciousness. So the jiva itself, what is the difference between a jiva and an inert object? We are made out of the 5 elements, like any other piece of wood or rock or stone. Everything is made out of the elements. Okay. The only difference is that we have a certain subtle body that allows us to gain self-knowledge. It allows us to experience our environment, and moreover, and furthermore, to gain self-knowledge. But fundamentally, a jiva is none different than a rock, different than a piece of dead wood. You know, it's just inert matter. But there is something that shines in the human jiva, which is its sophisticated intellect, that allows the jiva to understand that my nature is not the ring, my nature is gold, my nature is not a wave, it's the water. You understand? It's not the ocean. My nature is not even the ocean, but it's water. And this can be known only through the intellect of the human jiva. Okay? So what is the separation, difference, or distance between this object called the human jiva and consciousness? So there is an object, it's a sentient object, but moreover, this object shines with self-consciousness, and it has the potential to understand that in truth, its nature is water alone, is gold alone. That's the only difference between human jivas and all other jivas or all other inert objects. Okay? So what it means to say? It means that everything is just appearing, caused by consciousness, you know, in association with Maya, and the whole universe is nothing but consciousness appearing as media, appearing as names and forms. And none of this is really the self or consciousness, but all of that exists not separate from the self. The jiva body is not separate from the self, the jiva mind is not separate from the self, and the jiva self-knowledge is the self. Okay? The mind is matter, is inert matter. The body of the jiva is inert matter, but there is something called self-knowledge, which is a knowledge gained through this reflection of consciousness in the subtle body, in the mind of the jiva, that allows the jiva to know that not only my body is not separate from consciousness, I am consciousness, because I am the light that, I'm the reflect light of consciousness. Okay, and I share the same nature, light of consciousness alone. Everything is just consciousness. And we have the privilege of this intellect that allows us to understand it. If we believe that we have physical body, we feel separate from God or consciousness or whatever we call it. If we believe that we are the mind, we feel separate as well. But if we understand that we are gold and gold alone, we are water and not the ocean and not the waves, and we understood.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the self. I mean, I have no confusion about that. But but the notion that the world, the self and the world are not different. This is what they're saying in this scriptural, and of course I realize it's a translation, and perhaps some kind of, the translation is never as good as, say, the Sanskrit. But what do you, they're not different.
The not self of the world is mithya, it's not real. The self is the only reality. You understand? So the self is not mithya.
Well, I understand that totally.
In the sense, because it's the only reality. But the mithya world is not separate from the self. You understand? Everything exists, and it owns it owns its existence to conscious existence itself, from Brahman itself. In that sense. So let's look at another analogy. If you are in the desert and then you see a mirage, okay, and then you believe that there is a lake, there is water there, so you come close and you still believe it. So later on, when you go there and you see there was no water, there was just an appearance, okay. But when you're looking for a distance, there was no separation, there was no distinction, there was no distance between the lake and the water. When you go close there, you see that the sand is completely dry. There was never any water. Okay, so but it appears to be a lake. So this phenomenon of appearance of the universe is just not real, but exists as not separate from consciousness. You understand? The jiva exists as an appearance. It's not real, the body-mind of the jiva. But there is something about the jiva, which is its essential, fundamental, free nature as consciousness, which is consciousness, is man. You understand? So that's what is important to understand.
Well, I understand those analogies. Yeah, okay. But I feel like this statement that they are not different. I mean, do you think this is a flaw in this translation?
Yeah. In what part of the Tattva Bodha you see this?
Well, this is on, I don't know what version I have. It's like on page 22 of 25.
Okay.
And I forgot where I got this one. On this knowledge of truth, Tattva Bodha, I don't know where I got this from, if I got it from you or from Jane.
I sent it
No
to
cover page on it.
let me look.
Page 22.
I mean, isn't it? Can you know, if you do the location of objects teaching, Trudy, and then you see that everything that can be experienced can only be experienced inside of consciousness, and maybe that's what it's referring to. That you can't separate anything from consciousness. Everything that exists is only known via the means of consciousness. So,
No, I understand that completely, but in this statement, the bold statement, the way they say it, that the self and the world are not different. I can copy and paste this, I think, and send it to you in the chat. How do I do that function? Because just the way it's said, I mean, I understand those, the self and the object teaching.
Yeah, all object, the universe is not the self, but exists as not separate from the self, as a superimposition and appearance, okay? The world is not the self. The world is mithya, okay? So self,
I know that. I know that. But why is this statement saying that the world, that the self and the world are not different?
yeah, okay.
Say, this is the precise thing that I'm asking about.
Yeah, but you should not be caught up on those literal words and understand the concept. The concept is to understand that fundamentally, okay, everything is just consciousness appearing as names and forms. In that sense, all ornaments of gold, they share, they enjoy the same nature as gold. You understand? Everything.
I understand those arguments
Okay.
completely.
Yeah.
It's just
That's all you need to understand, rather than be caught up with literal words.
because, you know, I also, you know, value the original scriptural text and like to refer back to them. And so this copy is there, and I'm thinking like,
It's not the original copy that I sent to you, because I don't have the page in 22.
well, I don't know where I got this copy from.
Yeah. Later on, you can copy please the entire verse or something and send to me by email. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
It's getting late here. I need
Yes, exactly. I'm sorry, your
to
dinner's
get
waiting.
going.
Okay. Thank you so much for.
You're most welcome. Also, we meet again. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
And you know what?
Thank you, Alinda.
Oh no, I almost thought that we are not recording, but we did record today. Good. Okay. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
See you next time.
Thank you.
thanks.